Welcome to Tennessee Court Talk. My name is Nick Morgan. For this episode, and to celebrate Black History Month, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Judge John McClarty of the Tennessee Court of Appeals to discuss his self-authored book, The Dreamer, John W. McClarty. A native of Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he still lives today, the book details his life from before his childhood to his appointment to the Tennessee Court of Appeals. Judge McClarty was voted onto the Court of Appeals bench in 2009 from the practice of law and still serves in that role in 2024. Judge McClarty, welcome to Tennessee Court Talk.
Thank you.
So I want to start talking about the impact your parents had on your life. Your dad worked multiple tough jobs around the Chattanooga area. Your mother was a nurse, but we're talking about the 1940s and early 50s here. Describe to our listeners what home life was like during that time frame.
When I was born in 1948, as soon as the earliest I had memories of my home life at that point was, I think I was probably about 3.5 to 4 years old. I remember specifically being around 4 years old when I can actually recall some things that happened and where we lived at that time. It was before my mother before she went to school to become LPN. My dad worked at a factory. He worked as a bellhop at a hotel. And basically, the work was not consistent, and the work was, he didn't make very much money, but he maintained, to us, we lived a good life. We lived in a house, you can call it a house, it was attached onto what may be called a convenience store. We lived in the back of that convenience store. We did not have any what I call inside facilities, no hot water, no toilet facilities. We had a toilet out back, no central electric, anything like that, any heat like that. But to us, since that's all we knew, we lived a pretty good life.
Even as the civil rights movement moved forward throughout your childhood, you mentioned that you only recall 2 race-integrated events in Chattanooga before you left for college. So we're talking from 1948 to you leaving for college in, let's say, 1967. Your hometown still hadn't integrated?
Well, 1954 is when the Supreme Court ruled on their decision in Brown versus Board of Education. Now, school integration in Tennessee, or in Chattanooga in particular, and I'm talking about what I actually experienced and what I saw. I'm not talking about what was on paper. All during my school years, from elementary school to junior high school, I do remember in the mid-60s, and I'm talking about 66, 67, there were some students, black students, that went to a white school. And I think the idea was we received notice somewhere around that time that we could go to a different school, white school. And there were some black students that did do that, but they were sent back. They flunked them out.
Yeah, I think the ruling happens in 1954, Brown v. Board of Education, and I think a lot of people think that the ruling happened and the country just started to integrate.
No.
What motivated you to keep a promise to yourself to become a lawyer?
Well, I developed this dream, and when I was about 4 years old, and I'm not for sure as to why or how I got the dream. There was 2 incidents that happened in my life that occurred that I can relate to that sort of led me on this path. One was my dad had a pickup truck, and he was hit in this pickup truck, and he had to get a lawyer to either file a claim for him or to defend his action in case if he was at fault, and I don't know which one at the time. But I do know he did hire a lawyer, and when he talked about that lawyer, there was this look on his face that he was so pleased with the lawyer, and it seemed like he was really happy or the lawyer really meant something to him. And I would see that look on my dad's face as a kid, and I said, wow, I want my dad to look and talk about me like that. So that might have been one of the things that encouraged me to go in that field. The other one was my mom. I heard her talking, and she might have been talking to my dad or some other friends about this friend of hers who was killed by her estranged husband. And she was killed with a ice pick, which was common at that time. Nobody had refrigerators that we knew of. Everybody had ice box. An iceman come by in the morning, deliver ice, and when you get a block of ice, you got to have an ice pick. So ice picks were very common. And nobody knew what happened to her at the time. Apparently, if you stab into meat with an ice pick and pull it out, everything will cover up. In a human body, it don't bleed, okay? It bleeds on the inside. And I remember her telling them about that. And they didn't know, and she didn't tell, wouldn't tell what happened to her. Only when they performed an autopsy, they found out that she had been stabbed in the heart with an ice pick by her husband. And when my mother talked about that, I mean, it really tore her up. I mean, and I just couldn't. And even up until the time my mother passed, I could not stand to hear or see my mother cry. I really couldn't. It just broke me up. And I think what happened once I heard her talking about that, and she was so strong in her feelings about it, that I just said to myself that I got to do something. I want to be in some type of business or some type of job that help people resolve their problems and their difficulties in a peaceful and honorable way, so people won't have to suffer like my mother suffered over the loss of her friend.
So you mentioned in the book that you wanted to be a lawyer at a young age, but you didn't quite have the best grades in high school. In fact, you were on the path to become a bricklayer.
Well, I have always worked. I've always had some type of job, whether throwing paper, cutting grass, selling wood, cutting wood, selling wood, babysitting, and all my life, even as a small kid. When I got into the 8th grade, I got this job at a grocery store, and we was working at the store. I'd go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning and till 8:30, and then go to school, get out of school about 3 o'clock, and I'd have to be back at the store about 4 o'clock. And then from there, from 4 o'clock to about 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. And that was 5 days a week. And on Saturday, I'd be there in the mornings at 7 o'clock and then get off to about 7 or 8 o'clock at night with on an hour of a break. So that means that there was not a lot of time for studying. I did not realize the detriment that I was causing myself educational-wise because I enjoyed working, but yet doing all this work, I was not able to keep abreast with my education and so forth. And I did that all during junior high school and high school. What happened was I found out at the end of my high school, as I was trying to get into college, that I was deficient educationally. In fact, that created a problem for me going to college. I attempted to get in and made applications to numerous colleges, and I was not accepted, but only one college accepted me, and that was Austin Peay State University at the time in Clarksville, Tennessee. And I think, looking back, the reason they accepted me because at that year, 1967, they were trying to increase the number of minority students on their campus. Austin Peay may have only graduated maybe about 1 or 2 students before I went there. The year that I went there, I think they had gone all out to bring in black students. As many as they could only bring in, maybe about 25 or 30. My class was the largest black class at Austin Peay. Out of 3,500 students, we only had about 25 or 30 students in my class. But they were willing to take a chance on me. When I got my midterm grades for my first quarter there, they would send the midterms out to the parents to let the parents know how we were doing. And I got those grades, and my grades were atrocious. I'm talking about really bad. I realized then that even though I had a desire to be a lawyer and graduate from college, be a lawyer, go to law school, I did not have the ability to do that. I was deficient academically, and I thought about it. What could I do? My mom told me that maybe you can, if you can't do that, then maybe you can come back home and work. I didn't want to do that. I said, no, I got this dream. And what happened was one of my college professors, my English professor, Mr. Waters, he was talking in class one day about students who were academically deficient. Said, what you could do is, in addition to your regular classwork in college, you can get books from the library, and you can study those books, books on education, grammar, composition, and mathematics, and all those other subjects, and bring yourself up. Say, it takes a lot of studying to do that, but you can bring yourself up to be proficient. And that's what I did. And I started that process, and we wind up, and I said my roommate and some of my friends, pretty much living in the library during my college time. And a lot of that would be studying, remedial studying, and bringing myself up. Most of them were already good students. And to the point where at the time I got ready to graduate from college, I was hitting close to the dean's list every quarter. I graduated from college in 1971, and in 1997, which would have been about 26 years later, Austin P. Did an article on me, and they entitled that article "Against the Odds." Let me read to you something one of my professors said. This is a political science professor who was chairman of the political science department, Dr. Vernon Warren. He said that, I think John McClarty was one of the hardest working students that he had ever taught. He said, I had the feeling when he graduated that he would be very successful. More than that, he's a hard worker. He's personable, and he reaches out to people. He has a positive sense about him. This professor, even 20-some years later, placed me in the category of being one of the hardest or most improved students that he had.
It sounds like you were already starting to create good study habits. After reading the book, though, I feel like you kind of revolutionized yourself during your time between college and law school while serving in the Army. What about your time in Germany led you to more like a rigorous studying schedule? Because it feels like you really had an uptick in the book.
I sort of started on the path of revolutionizing my academics in college. Then I was drafted in the Army right after I graduated. I graduated in 1971, and I was drafted that summer or late summer. After I completed the basic training, I was sent for special infantry training. But during that time, I noticed I had some available time between my trainings. And what I did was I did more then than almost I did in college because I had that time. And I pretty much self-learned, so to speak. And while I was doing training, then once I was sent to Germany, the position that I was placed in Germany, I had certain work hours, but those work hours, after those work hours during the week, I had time that I could spend studying. On the weekends, I could spend a lot of time studying. So I did an awful lot of work working on things academically, even while I was in service.
You get out of the Army, you attend Southern University, which is a historically black college for law school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You grow up in this segregated environment for so long, and you had so many people tell you, you can't do that, or you can do this, or, you can't go to that event, you can go to that event. What was that transition like from a segregated situation to a historically black college?
Austin P was an integrated, at the time they were working on integration. Now, all the professors and staff at Austin P was not of that mind initially, but I think the administration was. Their idea is to make sure that all students got equal treatment and had an opportunity to have a chance to develop themselves in college. But after I left, while I was in the Army, I started applying for law schools right as my time was expiring in the Army. And I applied to, I know, 3 law schools. One was Howard University. The other one was University of Tennessee. At that time, the University of Tennessee, I think, were accepting African American students, but they were not accepting a lot of them. And maybe I did not reach up to their standards because they didn't even acknowledge my application at that point. But Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana did acknowledge my application and accepted me as for their fall semester. I left there. Southern University was probably the largest historical black college in the country at the time. I left Germany and started my study of law down there. They did not limit their membership, their admission to only African American students. It was a predominantly black university. However, they admitted students who applied, red, yellow, black, and white. And my class was a very mixed class. The faculty was very mixed also there. But they concentrated on preparing students for work in the legal profession, what it amounts to. So I had a good experience there, a very good experience there.
But you passed the bar. You come back to Chattanooga, which at this point, it's the 1970s. Things are moving forward, but you're still one of the very few African-American lawyers in the city. What do you do to make a name for yourself and establish yourself, get rapport?
When I came to Chattanooga in 1976, I took the bar after my graduation, and when I took the bar in Tennessee, there may have been 2, maybe 3 African Americans that passed the bar at that time.
Had to give you some motivation, right?
Well, the problem was, it was a national problem. Throughout the country, African Americans were not passing the bar throughout the country, and that didn't change till a few years later on, and after a bunch of lawsuits were filed, and the bar associations, I would say, start looking into the problem and developing a situation where they're looking at the type of legal education that was given and also how they prepare students for the profession. But at any rate, they changed the process, and so now there are more students that are prepared to take the bar and actually should be successful at the bar. Okay, but when I took it in 1976, like I said, it was only maybe about 2, maybe 3 African Americans that passed the bar in the whole state of Tennessee. In Chattanooga, when I came to Chattanooga to practice law, there was only one other African American lawyer in the whole city of Chattanooga. In fact, I think in all of East Tennessee at the time. And so that was an experience in and of itself. And I shopped around quite a bit to see if I could find someone that would be willing to allow me to work in their law office. And I was not able to find anyone until I ran into who is now, I consider my mentor, Jerry Summers. He had a very small law office, but he handled a lot of cases. And Jerry offered me a position. And I think the thing that really helped me here, and I don't know if he realized it or not, or I definitely did not realize, but the thing that really got me started was the jury required me to be at the Chattanooga City Court every morning from 8 o'clock in the morning when they start the docket until about 12 noon when they finish the morning docket. And Chattanooga City Court at that time handled all kinds of cases. And the judges there, what they would do is someone who come up on the docket who did not have a lawyer, could not afford a lawyer, that was before the public defender system, they would appoint me to represent that person in that preliminary hearing, or if it was a misdemeanor case in the trial, there was an actual trial there. And I did that for a whole year. And I found out that doing that, that gave me an awful lot of experience handling cases. It also put my name out there. I became, I won't say friends, but I became known to some of the police officers that were there because there was an awful lot of police officers in the morning who would make charges. And a lot of people, the court was always filled up. And people began to recognize me and notice me as a lawyer, and I think they observed the way I handle cases.
So you end up opening the only all African-American law office in East Tennessee. Do you feel like, I made it, I've done exactly what I wanted to do? Was that your initial plan to open your own office, or did you think, hey, this is it, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my career?
My dream and my desire was to open a law office. After I was with Jerry Summers and his practice for 2 years, I felt that I had gotten enough experience to do that. And I found out once I did make that decision, I received an awful lot of help. Although I did receive some discouragements from some people, I received a lot of help in doing it. But my thing was to open up an African-American law office. I was not aware at that time that it was the only black law office in East Tennessee, but apparently that was the case. There was no other black law offices in all of East Tennessee that I was aware of.
So this wasn't a making a statement kind of thing.
I was not making a statement, and a lot of people were observant toward that too. For instance, one of the judges, the juvenile court judge, Judge Dixon Smith, he had called me in on some special cases to handle, say, that special judge. He also had referred a lot of juvenile cases to me where juveniles charged with various crimes to defend. And when I opened up my office, Judge Smith was appreciative to me, of me, and he called me in. He said, John, he said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure you have enough cases. I'm going to appoint you on enough cases. And that's when cases began to, they was paying appointed attorneys. I'm going to appoint you on enough cases for you. It's going to help pay your overhead. He said, I like the way you handle cases, and I like the way you represent your people in court. And that's what he did, and that helped me tremendously. Jerry Summers said, I'm going to refer all of my bankruptcy Chapter 13 cases to your office. And then a lot of the people that I represented in city court and their families, they began to bring their cases. I was very busy.
So you weren't doing just civil either, right? You were doing civil and criminal.
I was doing civil and criminal. During that point of time, pretty much, I would say I had trials and on pretty much just about anything you can come up with. If it was a conflict brought into my office, pretty much I would take it if I felt that I had the possibility of being successful on the case.
You start this law firm, and I don't want to just race through a 32-year career, but the book does a great job of covering some of your huge personal injury cases, juvenile cases, etc. What made you even consider applying for the Court of Appeals in 2009? Because it seems like You always wanted to be a lawyer since you were a young boy. You did it. You had this super successful law firm in Chattanooga. Why does that even come to mind?
Apparently, there were some people who had observed my work and my demeanor and the way I carried myself over the years that felt that I should be a judge. It never fazed me, and I said, yeah, okay, sure. And I was making quite a bit of money, you know. And so it had come, it was brought to me a few times, and I realized that, I don't know. And I started thinking about it. When I got the notification from Martindale Hubbard that I had received the rating of AV, which is the highest rating that they give, and it's from peer review, it's from other judges, and this is something you don't even know that's going on until they make the decision. And I realized then that my colleagues in the profession, the judges that I tried cases and handled cases before, all felt that I was doing a good job as far as handling my cases and representing my clients. Justice, who was chief judge at the time, Mickey Walker, was preparing to retire. And my colleague and my mentor, Jerry Summers, and one or two other people, someone who was on the selection committee, approached me and said, "This is something you should consider." And of course, I thought that they were, what do you mean, consider the Tennessee Supreme Court? My goodness, there's not even another black judge that I was aware of. Definitely not another black state judge in all of East Tennessee. And you talked about, I think I need to consider applying for the Tennessee Supreme Court. And they were serious about it. Said, yeah. After I thought about it, I thought, this opportunity is not going to come again in my lifetime. And if these people think that that I'm worthy of this appointment, I think I owe that to the citizens of Chattanooga to make myself available. And so I applied for the Tennessee Supreme Court. Justice Lee, who was on the Court of Appeals at the time, she applied also. She had been on the Court of Appeals, I think, probably about 5 or 6 years. At the end, the governor appointed her to the Supreme Court, but later he appointed me to fill her spot on the Court of Appeals, which I feel was the best spot anyway. And once he appointed me, I talked with him and I said, "Governor," I said, "I pledge to do the best job that I can and to be respectful to the people and make sure that I don't embarrass anyone. I do the work that needs to be done on the Court of Appeals." And he said, "Wait a minute." He said, "You don't have to pledge me anything." He said, "After your background investigation," he said, "McClarty," he said, "I have no fear in you. I don't think you're going to do anything different than what you've already done, that you're going to do a good job on the Court of Appeals." He said, "You have proven yourself." That's how I wound up on the Court of Appeals.
Justice Lee, by the way, who ended up having a long stint on the Tennessee Supreme Court and just recently retired. And it's also unique. You don't see a whole lot of lawyers who jump from the practice of law straight to an appeals court. Was that unique at the time? And it had to be to some extent.
I think there may have been one or two that I can recall that occurred prior to my appointment. But there was another thing about that too. By being appointed to the Court of Appeals, I became the first African American state judge, period, in all of East Tennessee. And in fact, in the history of East Tennessee, there have not been, and still to this day, another African American state judge that has been appointed in East Tennessee, and that's 1/3 of the state of Tennessee.
What'd that feel like to you? So many people wanted you to go for the Supreme Court job, and you still get appointed to an intermediate appellate court, which is still a great honor. All of these, stories you've been telling, that had to feel such a sense of accomplishment, right?
It was a feeling of accomplishment, and it was also a feeling of responsibility, because I've always felt that I have an obligation and a responsibility to do the best job that I possibly can for the people of the state of Tennessee.
Even after a 32-year law career, because most people would just retire. They've had a good run. They've been they've had a good practice. You said no. Let's start a whole new career.
I said yes. Let's start a whole new career, and I said it because I felt that it was needed, and I had the opportunity to do it. Apparently, nobody else had that opportunity, and I felt I had an opportunity to do it. So I said, yeah, let's do this.
I want to switch gears a little bit. You mentioned Justice Mickey Barker, who just recently passed away in 2023. Do you have any stories from your friendship with Justice Barker? Did he mentor you once you were appointed to the bench?
Justice Barker was the best friend of my mentor, Jerry Summers, who gave me my first legal position. And they were very close. So that means that when I started working with Jerry Summers, I came in contact with Mickey Barker also. And when Mickey Barker took the bench as a circuit judge in Hamilton County, I tried many cases before him. Even before he was on the bench, there were some cases that he may have had that I may have had some involvement in. So I got to know him very well. When he applied for the Court of Criminals Appeal, I was one of the ones that he asked to go up and speak to the selection committee on his behalf. So I did that. And when he got ready to retire, I can't prove this, but I've told him about it, and I only talked to him about it. I had not said this to anybody else, but I think him and Jerry Summers got together and said it's time for McClarty to put the practice down and go on the bench.
It's time to pull him out of the bullpen.
Yeah, and I think that's how I wind up being even considered for a judicial position. I think he had something to do with that. And even after doing the process, I was aware that he made contact with some key people in support of my appointment. And after I was appointed, of course, he was there, and him and I have been still close. Whenever there's something happens somewhere that he's going, we would go together and stuff like that.
You recently received the Chief Justice William M. Barker, Mickey, Equal Access to Justice Award. Tell me about coming full circle. You won the award based off one of your best friends and mentors.
This award, I consider it as a life achievement award. The Chief Justice William M. Barker Equal Access to Justice Award. It was given by the Legal Aid Society of East Tennessee. Okay. The thing about it, when I received the award, it's just like me being a completion of what I've done, quite frankly, over the years. That's what I wanted to do as a young boy. That was my dream, of helping people to have access to justice to resolve their problems. This confirms that I have completed that mission. But it's almost like my life is going round in a circle, and this completes the circle, because the venue that I received this award at was only about a couple of blocks from where I lived when I was a child. The name of the place now is Chattanooga Whiskey, the old west side of Chattanooga. And all the houses, of course, have been demolished and new buildings have been built up. But I live right around the street from where this venue is at. And the other thing about it, and I told them this at the time they gave me the award, at that venue, at that building where Tennessee Whiskey is at, the church that I went to, Macedonia Baptist Church, was right on that site that building is at. So I told them there's a possibility that I could even came up with this whole idea of being a lawyer right here, where this building is right at. And now I get this award showing that I completed that dream or completed that desire of being an award. It's just like coming full circle to me.
Depends on what sermon was being taught that day, right?
Yeah, I could have been daydreaming in church about being a lawyer when I grow up.
I want to switch gears to another friend of yours. The Metro Nashville Schools Trailblazer Award was named after Judge Richard Dinkins for the 2024 school year. He's also mentioned in your book. We were talking earlier about how long it took for Chattanooga schools to integrate, and there was a major lawsuit about that process. And Judge Dinkins, who was a lawyer at the time, was on that case, which lasted well over 20 years. What was your experience with Judge Dinkins?
I sat with Judge Dinkins as a colleague on the Tennessee Court of Appeals. He was the first African American appointed to the Tennessee Court of Appeals. I was the second. I did not really know him until I started going through this appointment process, but I learned him then, and we developed a very good friendship then. I had tremendous respect for him, and I think that Judge Dinkins has done a tremendous job, not only in Nashville, but throughout the state of Tennessee, and the cases that he has handled, and as a judge has done a tremendous job. This someone to me is an icon. He's special.
What made you want to write this book?
I have, on occasion, mentored and talked with other judges. I have talked to other young attorneys too as they've gotten started out. And that was one of the reasons that I wrote the book, to give someone some encouragement that whatever they dreamed, whether it be a lawyer, a judge, or a doctor, or whatever it is, if they would work hard, their dreams can be fulfilled. You got to be consistent, and you got to work hard. And that's why I wrote the book, to give somebody some encouragement, let them know that I did it, and I came a long way. I paid for my own college. When I got out of law school, I did not have any educational bills to pay, and I worked my way through school. I don't encourage anyone to try to work like I did as far as the hours that I worked. I think that's over the top, so to speak. So I don't encourage that, but I do encourage people to work. I think you have to work hard, and I think you have to study hard and be willing to learn. And I think you have to put down that attitude of I know it all, and be willing and be open for new ideas. And I think you can allow yourself to develop yourself into whatever you want to be.
There's so much more detail of your life, and I encourage all of our listeners to seek out this book. It has some great stories of your long career and the people in your life that created the Judge McClarty that I and the state of Tennessee know today. You can buy it on Amazon, and I believe it's in Barnes & Nobles as well. Thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Tennessee Court Talk.